Hi guys, it's Kayla Carson, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about the history of directing. As some of you know, I have fallen in love with directing, so it's really near and dear to my heart. Um, and I thought that it would be really interesting to sort of go back in time and really focus on the evolution of directing and look at some of the sort of expectations of the role of the director, and how that sort of evolves over time. So there are a lot of different things about the early directing styles that differ as far as place to place. So in ancient Greece, we sort of see this choregus, which is like the leader of the chorus, and it was really an actor who led the chorus in song and also really directed their movement. But they were really mostly involved with the chorus and really didn't touch any other aspects of the show. So they didn't really do anything to unify the production. And sort of we see the same thing in ancient Roman times, where a wealthy citizen would come in and sort of organize everything, but again, not really unify our production. And then in medieval times, Dr. Eric W. Trumbull explains to us that there was a master of secrets and a keeper of the register. And the master of secrets would be sort of the secret keeper that, like, they knew all about the special effects and all about the little technical elements that happened throughout the show, but and then they pass that down through generation to generation. And the same with the keeper of the register. And the register really acts as their script. So they really wanted to preserve this way to recreate productions, which I thought was really, really interesting. It's sort of how we see a stage manager these days, as in their prompt book and everything is sort of like their Bible, and that's really what they use to recreate productions. But back in the medieval times, it was really the director type role. But what we really see in all of these ancient times is that there's not really a whole lot of artistic skill involved in these roles. It's really a lot of just managerial skill. And what we see with our shift to the modern day director is really they mesh the managerial and artistic skill to really get what we know of and what we think of as a director today. So really some of the first directors that we see, one of them is Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. And really what we see with him is that he makes the final managerial decisions, and the artistic decisions. Everybody comes to him and he gets the final say on everything. But one of the huge shifts in directing that we see in this time is that there's this emphasis put on ensemble more than the stars that it used to be. And that was something that I thought was really, really interesting. He was really known for his crowd scenes, and he saw theater as like this wholesome entertainment, but also natural culture. So he was really interested in sort of making things matter, And another thing that Goethe was really, really famous for, and what he was known for more than anything else, was his Sturm und Drang movement, which is literally translated to storm and drive or storm and urge. But with the evolution of English and things of that nature, it sort of evolved into storm and stress, right? And so that's what we think of as Sturm und Drang, is storm and stress. And what you think of when you think of storm and stress is a lot of extreme emotions. You see, it's a lot of spectacle, right? So one of the modern day directors that I think of when I think of this Sturm und Drang movement is Julie Taymor, right? So she directed a lot of really awesome things that we all know about. I mean, she directed The Lion King on Broadway, and she directed, obviously, Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, and we all know how that went. But something that you can always say about Julie Taymor is that she's a risk taker. She raises her stakes way, way up high, and then she just goes with it. She commits fully, and you have to respect that, honestly. I mean, she's an incredible artistic vision, and she has to be commended for that. So in my mind, she employs that Sturm und Drang, storm and stress kind of attitude of, you know, going to the extreme and committing fully with all those decisions that you make. And what I thought was really, really interesting also about Julie Taymor was that she was the first woman to win the Tony for Best Direction of a Musical. So that was, you know, this awesome, awesome thing. And she's employing things that go back to Goethe, you know? So I thought that was really, really cool. Now, somebody else that has really influenced our evolution of directing is Georg II, or the Duke of Saxe-Meiningen. And I mean, he was known mostly for his focus on historical accuracy and realism in historical dramas. He really wanted things to be as they would, you know? And he also did this whole shift of focusing heavily on crowd scenes and an ensemble. He always gave everybody something to do. He loved, like, he really, really valued this, the focus and the composition of pictorial styles. And he used this gestural and vocal imitation to really unify his productions. You know, he really wanted everybody to be on the same page. And we can see that theme a lot in what we think of now as modern day directing. Another thing that I thought was really interesting about the Duke of Saxe-Meiningen, really going back to how he used those ensembles and really gave everybody their own purpose, is it reminds me a lot of the super objective, which was a big selling point of Stanislavski's method. So Konstantin Stanislavski was influenced very, very heavily by the Duke of Saxe-Meiningen. And what we see in modern day directing is that almost everybody is influenced by Stanislavski. I mean, we think about Stanislavski all the time. We were taught in Acting 1 that, you know, we were taught his method, and that he had all these wonderful, wonderful things to say, especially about acting, you know, and that's something that's really cool. And I've got a quote from Stanislavski that I think really applies here. He says, In spite of my great admiration for individual splendid talents, I do not accept the star system. Collective creative effort is the root of our kind of art. That requires ensemble acting, and whoever mars that ensemble is committing a crime, not only against his comrades, but also against the very art of which he is a servant. And Konstantin Stanislavski said that. And it really goes back to all these ideas of unifying our productions, having that super objective, and really making every role count. Something else that Stanislavski always said is that there are no small roles, there are only small actors. So he was really pushing that influence. And something that I think is really interesting is that there are all these other directors that are very, very heavily influenced by Stanislavski, and even one of the greatest actors, or the greatest directors, excuse me, of our time, really, is Harold Clurman, and he's been an incredible, you know, director, and even, you know, world-renowned acting teacher and actress Uta Hagen, who we also study in Acting 1. Crazy, I know. She said this about Harold Clurman. She said, "Mr. Clurman refused to accept a mask. He demanded me in the role. My love of acting was slowly reawakened as I began to deal with a strange new technique of evolving in the character." And Uta Hagen said that about Harold Clurman when she was directed by him. And I thought that was really interesting, you know, that's really bringing in all these things that we've learned about these people, and it's interesting to go ahead and look back on these things that we've been learning in this theater history course about, you know, who was important. And I think that it really just reinforces everything that we've learned so far, is that these people are so intertwined with each other. Everybody worked with everybody, you know, in the time. Another director who's been very influential and very influenced by Stanislavski is Rob Marshall. He's more of a very, very modern director. He actually made his start in theater, but then made a transition to film. And something that he took from Stanislavski's theories is that, you know, there's really this very trusting, very important atmosphere sort of to harbor with your actors as a director, and really to respect them and gain their respect and trust. And something that Rob Marshall is very known for is the fact that, you know, he changes his process for what the actors need. And that was exemplified a lot in his transition to film, is that, you know, film acting and film directing is so much different than theatrical acting and directing. And so he really had to amend his process based on what his actors needed. And doing that, I thought that, you know, it really goes back to all these things that Stanislavski teaches about, you know, really having this collaborative experience. So I think that looking back on theatrical directing and really taking a look at the basics and what exactly is expected of a director and seeing how that has sort of evolved through time is really, really interesting, and it helps me a lot as a director to go back and revisit these things that, you know, we all sort of know, but taking a look deeper into, you know, what actually is important in directing. And I think that through all my research, I've begun to realize that really that unification and collaboration in a production is really what's most important. And we can see that from the very beginning. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me, and I hope you all have a great day.